Alien warned, "Do not attack the humans. They will never let you flee." The Galactic Transit Authority received the distress beacon at 0714 station time, not a distress signal, a beacon. The automated kind that activates when life support detects zero biosignatures above bacterial level for more than 6 hours. Medical Research Station Helix 9 sat in the void between the Carina arm and the outer scatter, a human facility studying cross-species disease vectors in deep space. Small, civilian, 127 souls, mostly scientists, some families, far enough from shipping lanes that piracy made no sense, close enough to the transit network that regular supply runs kept it connected. When Magistrate Velis Koran's inspection vessel arrived 31 hours later, the station lights were on. Velis stood in the airlock transition chamber, his crystalline mural structure processing the initial atmospheric readings. Standard oxygen-nitrogen mix. Temperature, 21.3 degrees Celsius. Gravity plates functioning normally. Power grid at 87% capacity. No bodies. Readings are stable, announced his security officer, a four-armed Kren named Commander Thurix, whose species had fought 14 wars and learned to trust suspicion over hope. No biological hazards detected. No radiation spikes. No chemical weapon residue. Velis stepped through the inner door. The corridor stretched ahead, lit by soft panel lights designed to mimic Earth's sun. A child's drawing was mag-sealed to one wall. A spaceship with wings that made no aerodynamic sense. Signed Emma, age 6, in careful letters. The drawing was unfinished. The crayon still sat in the magnetic tray below it. Scan for recent departures. Velis ordered. Emergency pods, shuttles, any vessel capable of evacuation. Thurix's upper arms worked a handheld scanner while his lower arms rested on his dual sidearms. All evacuation craft present and sealed. No launch records in the past 72 hours. No docking records either. They moved deeper into the station. The medical bay held examination tables with instruments laid out mid-procedure. The commissary had meals half-eaten, some still warm enough to register on thermal scan. Living quarters showed beds unmade, showers running until the water conservation protocols shut them down automatically. In the research wing, Velis found the logs. 127 personal recording devices. Scientists kept daily journals as part of protocol, documenting subjective experiences alongside objective data. Every device was active when the people vanished. Velis played the first one. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, lead xenobiology researcher, recording her evening summary. Tissue sample from subject 47C showing unexpected cellular cohesion when exposed to silence. Not a click or a cut. The recording continued for another 6 hours of nothing before the device's battery died. Just Tanaka's breath, her voice, the ambient sound of her laboratory, and then between one syllable and the next, absence. Velis played another. Chief Engineer Marcus Webb. Power consumption anomaly in Junction 7. Probably just a calibration drift. I'll check it after. Velis played 17 more. All the same. Mid-sentence, mid-breath, mid-life. This is not possible, Thurix said quietly. His species understood violence. They understood death. They did not understand this. Velis moved to the station's central operations hub. The main computer held routine telemetry, crew schedules, supply manifests. He queried the timestamp range around the disappearances. 072214, standard operation. 072245, automated beacon activation sequence begins. 14 seconds. In 14 seconds, 127 humans ceased to exist within the detection range of the station's sensors. No alarms, no breach warning, no system failures except for a single note in the power distribution log. Unscheduled energy draw, 14.7 second duration. Source unidentified, consumption profile unknown. Get me Engineer Makina, Velis said, the human contractor who services these stations. If anyone can explain that power signature, it's her. She stood in the operations hub, staring at the power log with an expression Velis had learned to recognize as human concentration, jaw tight, eyes moving in small tracking patterns, fingers drumming against her thigh. "This doesn't make sense," she said finally. "Explain," Velis prompted. "Power consumption on a station this size is predictable. You've got life support, gravity computing, lab equipment. Spikes happen when something big turns on. An autoclave cycle, an airlock decompression, a communications burst." She pointed at the log. "This spike pulled 14.4 gigawatt hours in under 15 seconds. Thurix's weapons arms twitched. Is that significant?" "Significant?" Joss laughed. A sound with no humor. "Commander, that's enough energy to run this entire station for 9 months, and it happened in the time it takes to sneeze." She pulled up a comparison chart. "Look, this is what the power grid looks like during a normal day. Gentle curves, predictable rhythms." The display showed smooth waves of consumption, rising and falling like breathing. "Now look at the event." A spike shot upward like a nail driven through paper. The graph line went from baseline to maximum capacity so fast it was nearly vertical, held for 14 seconds, then dropped back down just as sharply. "Whatever pulled that power," Joss continued, her voice dropping. "It didn't use the station's systems. It bypassed them, tapped directly into the reactor core through a channel that shouldn't exist. And whatever it was precise, surgical, like someone plugged in a device specifically designed to interface with this station's power grid, without triggering any safeties." "Could it have been installed beforehand?" Velis asked. "Hidden equipment?" Joss shook her head. "I inspected this station 4 months ago. Full TED. If there was unauthorized hardware, I would have found it." "Then how?" "I don't know." Joss met his eyes. "But I know what that energy profile looks like. It's a transference signature, the kind of draw you'd see if someone was running a matter transmission array or a dimensional fold generator." The room went very quiet. "Those technologies are theoretical," Velis said carefully. "Yeah," Joss replied. "They were 67 light-years away. On the human diplomatic station orbiting New Geneva, Dr. Serene Vol received a message that made her hands stop working. The text was brief. "Station Helix 9 incident requires xenopsychology consultation. Travel authorization attack. Your sister's name is on the manifest." Serene sat very still. Her office overlooked the planet below, a world where humans and 4 other species coexisted in careful equilibrium. She taught courses on interspecies communication. She mediated dispute. She believed deeply that understanding could bridge any divide. Her sister Lena worked on Helix 9. Worked. Past tense now maybe. She accepted the assignment without reading the details. 14 hours later, she stood in the same operations hub, where Joss had explained the impossible power spike. Velis handed her a datapad containing all 127 personal logs. "I need you to tell me what happened to them," Velis said. "From a psychological perspective, human emotional patterns. Anything that might explain. You want me to explain why they're gone?" Serene's voice was flat. "I want to understand the mechanism. If humans experience distress, fear, panic, those emotions might leave traces in the logs, patterns we can follow." Serene played her sister's log. Lena's face appeared on the screen, smiling in that way she always smiled when she was tired, but satisfied. "End of day summary. Station time. Finished the protein sequencing on sample batch 16. Results are actually kind of beautiful. I'll send you the images later. Say you'll love the symmetry." The image froze mid-smile. Lena's hand was rising to brush hair from her face, caught forever in a gesture she'd made 10,000 times. "Something's wrong with the..." Silence. Serene played it again and again, listening to her sister's voice cut off between the and whatever word came next, trying to hear what Lena had noticed in that final second before everything stopped. "Dr. Vol." Velis's voice was gentle. "His species didn't experience grief the way humans did, but they understood pattern disruption, the fracture of expected futures. She knew," Serene whispered. "Right at the end, she felt something." "Can you tell what?" Serene shook her head. "Wrong with the..." "What? The lights? The air? The gravity? We'll never know." She set down the datapad and walked to the viewport. The stars looked the same as they always did. Distant, cold, indifferent. Magistrate, has anyone contacted human authorities about this? Yes. 3 days ago, we sent a full report to Earth Central Command, the Colonial Administration, and the Human Defense Network. Veles paused. They haven't responded. At all? Not a single word. The silence lasted 47 days. During that time, Veles's investigation continued. He brought in specialists from 4 species. They scanned every molecule of the station. They ran simulations of the energy spike. They interviewed the supply crews who'd visited Helix 9 in the months before the disappearance. Nothing explained how 127 humans could vanish from a sealed station without triggering a single alarm, but something else was happening. Something that worried Veles more than the mystery itself. Every human ship in the galaxy had stopped moving. Not stopped completely. They maintained orbital positions, kept to scheduled docking procedures, followed traffic control directives, but exploration missions were quietly cancelled. Colony transports re-rated to holding pattern. Even the civilian vessels, the traders and tourists and family transports, all found reasons to stay close to home. Human space went silent. No news broadcasts, no diplomatic communiques, no responses to trade inquiries. The Galactic Community Council convened an emergency session. This behavior is unprecedented, announced Council Speaker Janari, a being of pure energy contained in a crystalline matrix. Humanity has been a cooperative member of this community for 93 years. This silence violates treaties, trade agreements, and mutual defense protocol. Ambassador Teth of the Velen Compact stood. Perhaps they're grieving. 127 of their people are missing, presumed dead. Maybe we should allow them space to grieve. Councillor Rax of the Ordani Union interrupted. Every species suffers loss. We express condolences and move forward. We do not shut down entire sectors of space. Magistrate Veles sat in the observer section, listening. Something about the debate felt wrong. The other councillors spoke of human behavior as if it were erratic, emotional, inefficient. But Veles had spent weeks reading human cultural files while investigating Helix 9. He'd studied their history, their wars, their literature, their strange habit of telling stories about people who disappeared, and the others who never stopped searching. They weren't grieving, they were waiting. On the 47th day, human silence broke. A single transmission reached every spacefaring species simultaneously. No words, no demands, just data. Technical schematics of an energy signature, waveform patterns, mathematical models of dimensional variance, the same signature that had appeared in Helix 9's power grid the moment 127 humans ceased to exist. And below the data, one line of text. We're listening now. Archivist Pell, a moth-like being whose species lived 3 centuries and remembered 5, stood in the historical vault of the Seraph Concordat, staring at a file that hadn't been opened in 2,000 years. The file was labeled Species Who Can. Inside were records of 3 civilizations that had vanished across history. Not destroyed, vanished. Whole populations removed from planets, stations, ships, always without violence, always without explanation. And in every case, the disappearances were followed by the collapse of nearby civilizations, not through war, through something the ancient records struggled to describe: persistence, pattern, extinction. One document called it search-driven dissolution. Read another. The records noted that in each case, one species had refused to accept the disappearances. They'd developed new technologies, traveled to impossible places, made contact with dimensional frameworks that shouldn't have been touchable, and they'd never stopped searching until they found their people, or destroyed everything between them and answers. 2 of those species were human ancestor groups, subspecies, that existed before modern humanity, separated by evolutionary branches. Science still didn't fully understand. Pell brought the files to Veles. Magistrate, I believe we've misunderstood what humans are. Veles read through the ancient records, his crystalline mind processing patterns across millennia. This suggests humans have done this before. Not humans exactly, but their genetic root structure. The pattern holds across their evolutionary line. Pell's wing membranes fluttered with agitation. When someone takes their people, they don't calculate cost-benefit responses. They don't negotiate or accept settlement. They restructure reality until they get their people back. That's impossible. So was removing 127 people from a sealed station in 14 seconds. Tell looked at Velis with eyes that had seen empires rise and fall. Magistrate, whoever did this doesn't understand what they've started. The Ascendancy Collective held their emergency meeting in a neutral sector, aboard a vessel designed for pure logic processing. No emotional interference, no biological comfort considerations, just efficient exchange of information. 6 species comprised the collective, all hyper-rational, all convinced that emotion was the greatest threat to galactic stability. They'd watched humanity spread through space for 93 years. With growing concern, humans made decisions based on feeling. They risked resources to save individuals. They formed attachments that overrode sensible calculations, and their expansion rate was accelerating, bringing their emotional instability to more and more systems. The collective had debated the human problem for 40 years. 3 months ago, they'd voted on a solution containment protocol. Mercy, Envoy, Orath, the collective spokespersons, stood before the High Council now, his vocal resonators modulated for perfect clarity. The protocol was executed flawlessly. He reported Medical Research Station Helix 9, selected for its isolation and small population. The quantum displacement array functioned exactly as designed. All 127 humans were transferred to a stable dimensional pocket, with full life support, sustaining resources, and zero trauma. They experienced no pain, no fear. They simply stepped sideways from our reality. And the response? Asked High Logician Ven. As predicted. Initial confusion, investigation by local authority. We expected negotiation to begin within 2 weeks, at which point we would offer terms. Humanity voluntarily reduces expansion rates and submits to emotional regulation protocols in exchange for the return of their people. Expected. Past tense. Ven's statement was not a question. Yet, humanity's response has been atypical. Orath displayed the 47 days of silence. They have not negotiated. They have not threatened. They have not contacted us at all. Then the protocol is working. They're paralyzed by loss. Orath's voice carried a frequency that indicated uncertainty, which was itself unusual for his species. I believe they're preparing. For what? To find their people. The council chamber was silent for 4.7 seconds. An eternity in collective processing time. Location of the dimensional pocket is undetectable. Then stated, we used quantum randomization protocols specifically to prevent tracking. The humans cannot possibly. The chamber's communication systems chimed. An incoming transmission. Source human space. The data packet that arrived contained the complete specifications of the collective's displacement technology, including the quantum signature unique to their equipment, the mathematical framework for locating dimensional pockets, and a note. Your technology left traces. We found. We're coming. Captain Lyra Shen stood on the bridge of the UESS Searcher, the first of 40 vessels, built in 29 days by every human shipyard operating at 400% capacity. The ships were not warships. They carried minimal weapons, skeleton crews, and power systems that shouldn't have been possible. Each vessel was covered in sensor arrays that drank antimatter fuel like water, burning through energy reserves that made the Helix 9 power spike look like a candle. Lyra was 41 years old. She'd lost her husband in a mining accident, her daughter to a genetic disease, and her faith in the universe's fairness somewhere in between. She'd volunteered for the Searcher program because it asked one question she could finally answer with certainty. How far would you go to bring someone home? All the 40 Searcher ships deployed along a dimensional boundary that human physicists had theorized about for 70 years, and cracked in 39 days of desperate work. Power to the displacement scanners, Lyra ordered. Maximum burn. Her first officer, a man named Kofi who trained as an architect before the silence, hesitated. Captain, at that consumption rate we have fuel for maybe 6 hours. Then we'd better find them in 5. The scanners went active. Space folded. Reality bent. Every sensor on the Searcher screamed as they punched through dimensional boundaries that weren't meant to be touched. And in the distance,
Hidden behind layers of reality, Lyra's instruments found a pocket of stable existence that held 127 human biosignatures. "Contact," she whispered. "All ships, we have contact. Across 40 vessels." Crews began the process of forced dimensional destabilization, ripping holes in space-time itself to create an exit point large enough for humans to pass through. The collective watched through their own sensors, unable to believe what they were seeing. "They're going to collapse the pocket," then said. "If they destabilize it incorrectly, everyone inside will die." "They know," Orath replied quietly. "They don't. They'd rather risk losing their people trying to save them than accept leaving them behind. That is not rational." "No, it's human." The Ascendancy Collective deployed ships to intervene, not to attack. They still believed they were acting ethically, but to stop humans from making what the Collective calculated was a catastrophic mistake. 20 collective vessels moved to block the searcher ships. Lyra watched them approach. Communications broadcast one message: "Get out of the way." The Collective did not move. "All ships," Lyra said, her voice carrying across every human vessel, "proceed through obstacles. Do not slow down." The searcher ships didn't fire weapons. They simply continued their dimensional cutting, moving forward regardless of what stood between them and their people. 3 collective ships, attempting to physically block the humans, intersected with dimensional rupture fields. The ships didn't explode. They unfolded, their matter spreading across multiple dimensional layers simultaneously. The collective retreated. Inside the pocket dimension, Lena Vol sat in a cafeteria that looked exactly like the one on Helix 9, eating a meal that tasted exactly like real food, watching a clock that showed the same time it had shown for, she wasn't sure how long. "Does anyone else feel like we're waiting for something?" asked Marcus Webb, the chief engineer. Yuki Tanaka looked up from her tablet. "I've had the same thought, like we're in a pause between moments." The walls began to shimmer. Reality tore open like fabric cut by invisible scissors. Through the gap, Lena saw her sister's face on a communication screen, tears running down Serene's cheeks. "Lena, we're pulling you out, but the window is narrow. You have to move." All 127 humans, they ran through corridors that stopped being corridors, through space that folded and unfolded, through the screaming math of dimensions, colliding. Behind them, the pocket began to collapse, its stability unraveling like a sweater pulled from one loose thread. 119 humans made it through the rupture before it closed. 8 did not. Their names: Yuki Tanaka, Engineer Marcus Webb, Botanist Sarah Kim, Maintenance Tech Jamal Foster, Student Researcher Emma Chen, age 16, Cook Alessandro Moretti, Medical Assistant Priya Sharma, Pilot David Okoro. The searcher ships sealed the rupture behind them. The dimensional pocket collapsed completely, taking the 8 with it. Not dead, but gone, erased from accessible reality. Captain Lyra Shen stood on her bridge, watching 119 saved humans being transferred to medical ships. She broadcast 8 names with timestamps of disappearance, as if documentation could somehow matter, as if remembering could substitute for saving. It couldn't, but humans tried anyway. The galaxy expected retaliation. The collective prepared for war. They activated defensive fleets, withdrew to fortified systems, began composing justifications for their actions that might satisfy war tribunals. Humanity issued one statement: "We found them." 8 did not return. Yuki Tanaka, Engineer Marcus Webb, Botanist Sarah Kim, Maintenance Tech Jamal Foster, Student Researcher Emma Chen, Cook Alessandro Moretti, Medical Assistant Priya Sharma, Pilot David Okoro. "We do not forgive. We do not forget. We do not accept this." Then silence again. No threats, no demand, just the 8 names broadcast on every frequency, in every language, repeating like a heartbeat. Envoy Orath requested a meeting with human representatives. He was granted one, not with diplomats but with Dr. Serene Vol, who sat across from him in a neutral station conference room, her expression empty of anything he could read. "We made a mistake," Orath said. His vocal resonators carried frequencies his species rarely used, the ones that indicated genuine remorse. The collective acted on logic that did not account for human psychological architecture. "We did not understand that you would." Risk everything, Serene finished. Tear apart dimensional walls, go through your ships without slowing down. Yes, you calculated that we'd negotiate, that we'd weigh the cost of recovery against the certainty of loss, that we'd eventually accept that 127 people weren't worth reshaping physics itself. That is what any rational species would do. Serene leaned forward. My sister almost came home. She was running through your collapsing pocket, and I was watching on a screen. And I saw her face, and then the rupture sealed and she was gone. Her voice didn't rise, didn't break, just stated facts. You took her twice. Once when you displaced the station. Once when your intervention forced us to rip open dimensions fast enough that the pocket collapsed before everyone got out. We were trying to prevent casualties. You were trying to prevent consequences. Serene stood. Envoy, I'm not here to negotiate. I'm here to deliver a message. Humanity has spent 47 days in silence developing technologies we didn't have before. Technologies we're now sharing with every spacefaring species in the galaxy. She placed a data chip on the table. Complete specifications for dimensional scanning, pocket detection, and forced extraction. Free, open source. Any species that wants to find their lost people now has the tools to do it. Orath stared at the chip. Why would you give this away? Because we're not the only ones who count our dead. We're just the first ones who refuse to stop counting. She walked to the door, then paused. The collective is dissolving. By the way, 4 of your member species withdrew this morning. They saw what you did and decided hyper-rationality isn't rational at all if it can't account for love. Magistrate Velis Koran filed his final report 6 months after the silence began. The report noted that humanity had not retaliated against the Ascendancy Collective. They'd simply made it impossible for anyone to use dimensional displacement as a weapon ever again. The technology was now public. The detection methods shared freely, the hiding places eliminated. More significantly, human behavior had permanently altered galactic cultural calculations. 3 species abolished their own acceptable losses, military doctrines. 12 civilizations opened investigations into missing populations they'd written off as extinct. The Seraph Concordat added a new historical file labeled Species Who Refuse to Let Go. Velis visited Helix 9 one final time before it was converted into a memorial. The station had been cleaned, repaired, repurposed. The 8 names were carved into a wall of dark stone in the central hub. Beside each name was a holographic display showing the person as they'd lived. Yuki laughing, in her lab. Marcus explaining a power conduit repair. Emma drawing a spaceship with impossible wings. Dr. Serene Vol stood in front of her sister's memorial, her hand pressed against the stone. We searched the collapse zone for months, she told Velis quietly. Sent probes into dimensional echoes. Scanned quantum phone patterns. Tried everything, but they're gone, not dead. Physics doesn't work that way inside a collapsing pocket. Just gone. I'm sorry, Velis said, and meant it in ways his species didn't typically mean anything. You asked me once what happened to them, psychologically, emotionally. Serene turned to face him. I think I understand now. When you take someone's family, you don't just threaten their presence, you threaten their entire framework for understanding reality. Because humans build our lives around connections. We define ourselves by who we protect, who we love, who we refuse to abandon. When you remove those people, you don't remove 127 individuals. You remove the foundation of what makes us. Velis processed this. Is that why your species responded so? Absolutely.
We responded the only way we could, by refusing to accept that any loss is acceptable. She smiled, a sad expression that Velis was beginning to understand, held more complexity than simple sadness. The collective calculated costs. We calculated consequences. They're not the same thing. A group of young Altarian students entered the memorial, part of a cultural exchange program. They moved quietly through the space, reading names, listening to the holographic displays. One student, barely old enough to have left their home world, stopped in front of Velis. Magistrate, I read your report for school. Is it true humans will travel anywhere to find their people? Velis looked at Serene, who nodded. Yes, he said. That's true, even if it's dangerous, especially then. even if everyone says it's impossible. Humans seem to consider that an invitation rather than a deterrent. The young Altarian stared at the memorial wall for a long time. I hope someone would do that for me. After the students left, Vela stood alone with Serene in the quiet station. What will your people do now? He asked. Keep searching. We've sent dimensional probes into 73 theoretical pocket locations. We're developing new mathematics to track collapse patterns. We're mapping every quantum signature we can find. She paused. We probably won't find them. The physics says it's impossible. But humans are very bad at accepting what physics says when it contradicts what love requires. That seems inefficient. It is, completely. Serene touched the wall one more time, but efficiency isn't the highest virtue. Sometimes stubborn, illogical, inefficient love is the only thing that matters. On a human colony orbiting Epsilon Eridani, a young child named Kai asked his grandmother why the adults all wore bracelets with 8 names engraved on them. The grandmother, who'd been a cargo pilot before the Silence and a searcher ship engineer after, knelt down to meet his eyes. Because we want to remember that we don't leave our people behind, she said, even when it's hard, even when it's impossible, even when everyone says we should give up and move on. Did you find them? Kai asked. Most of them, not all. Will you keep looking? The grandmother smiled. Always. That's what humans do. Across the galaxy, 317 species updated their cultural databases on humanity. The entry was brief. Humans, generally peaceful, cooperative, curious, form strong social bonds based on emotional attachment rather than logical benefit. Technological advancement is rapid when motivated by need to recover lost individual. Do not displace, kidnap, or otherwise separate humans from their social groups. They will find you. They will find their people. Obstacles between them and their goal are not barriers. They are problems to solve regardless of cost. Approach with respect. Approach with care. Approach knowing that humans count every single one of their own, and they count forever. The listener identity still unknown. Voice never matched to any registered human made one final broadcast. We are humanity. We do not forget. We do not accept loss. We do not calculate acceptable casualties. When you take our people, you do not make enemies. You make searchers, and searchers never stop. The transmission ended with coordinates, dimensional pocket locations where 17 other species had hidden populations across history, locations humanity had found while searching for their own. 12 species sent expeditions to those coordinates. 9 found their lost people. 3 found evidence of collapses too old to reverse. But they looked, because humans had shown them, it was possible to refuse acceptance, possible to choose searching over surrendering, possible to love loudly enough that reality itself bent around it. On Station Helix 9, now officially the memorial of those who did not return, a final holographic display activated at sunset station time every day. It showed all 127 faces from the original crew. 119 smiled from their returned lives. 8 smiled from memory. And beneath them, a message carved in stone, written in 30 languages. We found them. We're still searching. We will never stop. Young species studying at the memorial asked their guides the same question, rephrased in 1,000 different ways, but always meaning the same thing. Would you really do this for just one person? And the human guides always gave the same answer. We already have. Somewhere in the dimensional phone beyond accessible reality, 8 names echoed in quantum probability fields. Not conscious, not alive in any way biology could measure, but not forgotten. Because humans had developed sensors that could detect those echoes, and probes that could navigate probability space, and mathematics that suggested maybe, impossibly, someday, a way to reach even those lost beyond conventional rescue. It would take decades, centuries maybe. The physics was theoretical, the technology barely imagined, the chance of success measured in fractions of percentages. But humans were very good at impossible things when the alternative was forgetting. The searcher ships kept flying, the dimensional probes kept probing, the mathematics kept evolving, and across the galaxy, Every species that had ever written off lost populations as acceptable casualties quietly began to reconsider, because humanity had taught them something uncomfortable. Every loss is someone's entire world ending, and maybe, just maybe, the right response isn't acceptance. Maybe it's refusal. If you'd like to see what happens when humans become the searchers for other species, you might want to subscribe, because some searches span galaxies, and humanity's just getting started.